that. Okay. So I wanted to just run through something real quick. This is the FRQ that I ran through in class yesterday. And here's the first part of the question. I'm not going to repeat all of it, but anyways, the question is runner 3 thinks he can run a mile in less than 4.2 minutes in the next race. Is this likely to happen? Explain. Now, this was basically my answer that I wrote down for you guys. And you can see the normal model, the area underneath the curve that I showed. Here's the z-score calculation, the normal CDF, which gave me the actual probability. And I said there is a 1.61% chance of runner 3 running a mile in 4.2 minutes or less. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at today is the actual scoring rubric from AP for this question. And the ones that I assigned you guys last night, you're going to see the grading rubric for those on the Canvas page. So the first part of this, you can see it says, here are some solutions. So we needed to calculate the probability, and we did that right here. And so we did good with that. And then the other, it is possible but unlikely that the runner will run a mile. And I'm not going to read it, but you can see what's going on. You can see they put a lot more information in here than I did. And this is not the actual grading rubric. This is just a suggestion answer, a possible answer. So if I go to the next page, I'm just going to skip ahead now. Here is the actual rubric. It says it's part A is essentially correct, getting that E, if the probability is calculated correctly, it is correctly assessed as unlikely, and the justification is acceptable. Okay. And then anyways, you can read all through this. The probability here, partially correct, is that if it's not correct, but the given probability is correctly assessed. So here's the part, and it's good to see this kind of stuff because now I'm looking at my answer and I'm thinking, wait a second, I'm not sure that I really answered that question in a way that's going to give me an E or even a P. I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting to see what that was scored as. And let me go back real quick to the beginning. And you can see the question is this likely to happen? If I go to my answer, the question was, is this likely to happen? I said, there's a 1.61% chance of runner 3 running a mile in 4.2 minutes or less. Now, you could argue that is a direct answer to the question, but I didn't actually say yes or no. I never said that it was likely or unlikely because maybe in my head, 1.61% chance is a likely thing to happen. So here, I'm not sure this would qualify as a 4. You know, I felt pretty solid about this yesterday. And it's good to see what AP expects as an answer. So now I can go back and I can say, okay, I didn't actually answer the literal question that was asked of me. Is this likely to happen? I should have said something like, no, it is not likely to happen because according to the normal model and the probabilities calculated, there's only a 1.61% chance of this happening. That would have answered it pretty well. I assume a reader would have given me full credit for that. So this is just kind of a lesson here. Make sure that you're actually seeing the question and answering it like directly. And I'm not sure that I did that. So if I jump ahead to the next part, I was supposed to find the mean and the standard deviation of the team times, which is all the times combined. Here's the work I did, and I just kind of summarized it. And the next one, well, honestly, it looks pretty much the same. So far it's looking good. And part B is essentially correct if both the mean and the standard deviation are correctly computed. That's all I needed to do. I got the right answer. Okay, so this very much I got an E on this. So full credit for that. Now the next says, what's the probability that the team will beat its own best time in the next race? 18.4. What's the probability it's going to beat that? Well, I showed my normal distribution, I showed the z-score and the normal CDF calculation, I gave the 4.78% chance. Let's see what the answer should have looked like. So all they're expecting is the calculation, and it's essentially correct if the probability is correctly calculated using a mean, which is either correct or carried from B. Okay, so I got the right answer. They were only looking for that. And if I go back to this one last time, you can see the question is, what's the probability? And I answered exactly that. There's a 4.8% chance. Or I could have said 0.0478 probability, something like that. So anyways, it looks like I got that one essentially correct. So in this case, maybe we'd call this a 3. I got 2 parts essentially correct, but that part A, I didn't directly answer the question, so maybe they'd only give me a partially correct on that. Maybe they're generous and they call it essentially correct, but I don't, the point of this activity for today, when you're looking at your own response, is not so much to say, could I fudge this and call it a 3 or a 4? The real takeaway is like, okay, if I see a problem like this again, I'm going to make sure I look at the question and answer it directly. So it doesn't really matter if I call this one a 3 or a 4. I'll call it a 3 just because I want to be on the safe side. So what could I do to improve that next time? What is it I should have answered differently? And I think I know what my takeaway for this one is. So on the Canvas page, you've got a scoring guide for both of the FRQs, but for right now, I just want you to focus on the first FRQ. And what I want you to do, I'll pull it up onto the screen in just a second, but if you can access your Canvas, then you can look at it there separately. So I want you to take a few minutes to compare your response to what the guide suggests your score should be. And I'll give you, maybe once we get started, I'll give you about 5 minutes to kind of compare your response to the grading rubric. And, judge yourself harshly. If you knock yourself down to a 1 for this answer, then it doesn't matter. No one else is going to know. But judge yourself harshly on this. And then we're going to go into breakout rooms in just a little bit to just do a quick discussion, and then we'll do a quick recap as a class. So what I want to do real quick is pull up the actual scoring guide. So everyone should be seeing this now. This is the problem that I wanted you guys to focus on, the 2008 one. It's the one that's the railroad problem. Now, just so you can get through this somewhat quickly, it's 4 pages, but you can see the very first part are the solutions. And these are kind of just model solutions, but yours doesn't have to look like this. In fact, you don't even need to look at that really if you don't want to, though you will need to kind of compare your answer to these, the calculations. But once you've decided, like you've looked through that real quick, you can come down here. The next part, starting on page 3, is the scoring. So now you can say, okay, part A is going to be scored this way and this way. They split it up into 2 sections. Part B will be scored a certain way, and part C. So I'll leave this up on the screen, but I want you guys to take about 5 minutes, and I'll set a timer for this, to go through and figure out what score you would give yourself. And if you didn't do the FRQ last night, I want you to just look through this so that you could figure out what a good answer looks like, even if you didn't do it. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to kind of think about your grade that you gave yourself based on how you answered. And I only wanted you to look at the first one for right now. If you did look at the second one, it's not the end of the world, but I'll tell you what I want you to do with the second one. So I want you to, in the breakout rooms, and I'm just going to leave you there for like about 3 minutes or so. I want you, if there was anything that stood out to you, you can share any insights. Like maybe there's something that you didn't think you needed in your response, and so you didn't include it, and then you found out, oh, I should have included that. Or maybe you were sitting there not sure if something should be counted as an E or a P for grading purposes. So, and you don't have to go into great detail, but just kind of share anything that jumped out at you as you were going through this. And then if you can identify any new understanding that you gained from this, that can be something else you can talk about. So I'll put you into breakout rooms in just a second. Like I said, just about 3 minutes, and then we'll come back and wrap it up. I think just a few things to wrap this up. I hope you did learn something. I don't know if it's something that you felt like you wanted to say out loud, but maybe there's just some takeaway for you. Certainly, if you didn't do the FRQs, it's going to be more limited in what you could have learned from it, but you can still see, you can still benefit from knowing what an AP grading rubric looks like. So just a few things from my end that I want to kind of explain about this is that this is the start of a process. So yes, these were questions that we've looked over before, types of questions we've seen. So you should be able to do the math, and it's easy to make mistakes. So that can be a takeaway. Don't make those mistakes. But this is the start of a process as far as seeing what AP, what the College Board is looking for in a response. So if you looked at yours and you're like, oh my gosh, I did this awfully. I did not answer it all how they're expecting. I didn't include this information or that information, and I only got a 2. I thought I got a 4. It's the beginning of a process. You're going to learn more and more about what's expected. Okay, and that's my goal in the second half, is to kind of be looking at those grading rubrics more and training more with FRQs. And I think we're going to have the time for it in the second half of the class. Now, the other takeaway, which is not from this activity, but I just wanted to kind of make it really clear for you, if you are doing the AP test, and I have not polled you guys to find out who's doing it, who's not. I do hope you guys are, a lot of you are planning on taking the test, but if you're not, no big deal. But those of you who are planning on doing the AP test, I want you to keep in mind that getting a 5 on the AP test doesn't mean you have to get like a 90%. The cutoff scores change every year, but typically the cutoff for a 5 is getting like a 70% on the test. Meaning if you get a 70% on the test, you get a 5, just to make sure that's clear what that means. And maybe getting a 4 might be around a 60%, and a 3 might be around a 50%. Now, I'm not saying those are the actual numbers because it does change, but you know, it's rough ballpark figures there. So it's good to know that if you go through all the FRQs and you go through all of the multiple choice questions and you get 50% of the credit, you could still get a 3. And that means for most universities, they'll accept a 3 as college credit. So I hope, even if this was at first a little bit daunting, realizing like, oh my gosh, I didn't do well on that FRQ, hopefully the flip side of that is you don't have to worry about getting a 100% to get a 5. You don't have to worry about getting a 70% to get a 3. You know, so there's some wiggle room built into the scoring. And you know, people tend to do better maybe than they expect on these AP tests. So I don't know what else to say for today. What I want you to do for tonight is, before you grade your second FRQ that I assigned yesterday, knowing what you learned from the first one, I want you to look over your answer before you look at the grading rubric. I want you to, either in your head or actually on paper, revise what your answer looks like. Say, you know, change it to what you think the correct answer should be based on this, and then go through the grading rubric and see if you made the correct changes that helped your grade. So do that, and it's for your benefit to do this. I'm not going to be checking that you did, but tomorrow we're going to be looking over some of the multiple choice questions that you guys didn't do so well on for the progress checks. And that's going to be just kind of a quick recap in that regard. But that's all I have for today. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and stick around if you have any questions.